Hello and welcome to another amazing episode of 100 Yards of Football Sports Talk Radio. I'm your producer, Jeremiah Long, and joining me to talk about the amazing Coastal Carolina Chanticleers 2021 football team is a man who has an interesting personal connection to the team. And I'd love to hear you expand on that a little bit more. Mr. Logan Landers, how's it going?
Hey, what's going on, Jeremiah? Yeah, so you mentioned that I do have a personal connection with this team, and you're right. Who would have ever thought that this small team from the Sun Belt Conference will be linked with me? But yeah, it is. So Coastal Carolina is a small school in the Sun Belt Conference out there in South Carolina, and I frequent going to vacation there in the Myrtle Beach area, and they're out there in Conway, which isn't that far of a drive. It's about probably 30 minutes to maybe an hour, just depending on some traffic. But, man, this is a great school. I visited a few times. I've been to some games out there, and it's just a tremendous program out there. It looks great. There's teal everywhere you can go. And I actually thought before I went to my alma mater at West Georgia, I actually considered going here for school. So I do have a close connection with this school. I do keep up with them pretty regularly. And, man, I'm happy to be talking about them today.
Definitely. Well, Mr. Landers, we know that this isn't like the biggest school in the world, but every school has an amazing fan base. And I say it in every episode, and I'll say it again. This fan base is ready to come back and watch their team play live and in person, surrounded by the tailgating, the food, the smells, the camaraderie. Going out and watching it at a bar, going and watching the games in person, sitting outside of the stadium and watching it with your friends and family. That is going to be amazing, and I'm sure all of the fans are looking forward to that. So without further ado, Mr. Landers, tell us what Coastal Carolina has to look forward to this season.
Hoping you can keep the dream alive. Hoping that you can build off that success, because this team finished the year, Jeremiah, as the 14th ranked team in the country. That's better than some of the other big powerhouses we talk about, and guys in the Big Ten, in the Pac-12. This team finished in the 14th, right behind Florida, who's in 13th. So they are, they're in the middle of the pack there. And for a team that had a tremendous breakout 2020 season, where seemingly everything was lost for college football, this team played a bunch of games. They pretty much played a full schedule. They went 11-1 on the year. So they had a good season. The only loss of the year came in the bowl game against Liberty, who was one of their rivals. But they only lost that one by 3 points in overtime. So they beat every team but one last year. They beat some good teams who were ranked. They beat Louisiana, who was ranked 21 at the time. They beat BYU, which was a big upset, who was ranked 13th, and that was with Zach Wilson, who we all know went to the New York Jets. So that was a big upset. And so this team had a lot of good momentum. Who they're going to be heading into 2021, man. They have a great head coach under Jamie Chadwell, who a lot of big teams were hoping that this guy was going to leave the smaller school in Coastal Carolina and go on to bigger programs with, more recruits, better facilities, all that kind of stuff. But he chose to stick it out. He chose to come back to Coastal Carolina and wanted to keep doing his business here. And I actually saw, whenever I was doing some research on Mr. Chadwell, that he actually was, for one season, a head coach at Delta State, which is a rival for my school, West Georgia. So that was back in 2012, a little bit before I went there. So just a weird connection that I found even more with this team. So that was always fun to see. And a lot of teams and a lot of the media, a lot of the fellow coaches, they respect Coach Chadwell, just the way he was able to carry this team. I mean, for a team that was what I would even say expected to get in the top 25, to finish at 14th at the end of the year, you'll get some eyeballs looking at you then. So, Of course, while they're in the Sun Belt, they didn't have the toughest schedule. And, I mean, they played BYU, who was ranked 13th, like I said, and that's with Zach Wilson. And if I remember right, that was a game where, of course, where everything was going on with COVID, you had games getting canceled. And I think that was in less than like a week's notice. They were just like, look, we want to play somebody. We want to get into a bowl game. Why don't you have BYU come down here? We'll face them. And they got the win on that. I remember watching that game, and it was a tremendous battle of offenses. And, Coastal came out on top. So I was a little bit happier that night. I slept great. And so, like I said, that just built on that amazing 2020 season. So let's go on to 2021. It's a new year. But, man, Coastal is looking good. So they are, man, they're coming back with 19 starters. So, I mean, that's the thing is for a team who is in a smaller conference, you're going to have guys who are going to stick around for a little bit longer. They're not getting as many eyeballs on them from scouts. So they're going to remain at the program for more into their junior and senior years than you'd see at some of the bigger programs who get guys who are, 5-star recruits, who are going to be drafted in the first round. You're not going to see too many of that coming out of this program. But you are going to get some guys who are solid and who are going to be in the NFL. They've already had a few guys get drafted, like Taron Jackson, who was one of their the guy in their defense. So he's gone, but I think that they are going to miss him. But I think that this team, like I said, with 19 guys coming back, you're pretty much running back your 2020 season for the most part. So that's always good to hear if you're Coach Chadwell. But I think that this Coastal Carolina team, you get Grayson McCall coming back, who is going to be your quarterback. And like I said, they ran a triple option last year, so I think that could work well this year. They have a lot of trickery up their sleeves. And for a guy who was the Sun Belt Conference Player of the Year, who had a very good year, finished about 69% of his passes for a little bit under 2,500 yards and a good bit of touchdowns, I think that he is a good quarterback for this program. He's going to lead them to another good year. And he also ran for a lot of yards, too. Like I said, they're in that triple option. So that means the quarterback got to have some good mobility as well. He ran for a little bit less than 600 yards. But for a guy who throws for, around 2,500, who runs for around 600, that's a good year all in all. And I think that he can just build off of that. I really do. So let's talk a little bit more about the rest of the team. Because like I said, you have the Sun Belt Conference Player of the Year as your quarterback. That's always great to have. But then he's got a lot of weapons coming back. He's got, like I said, most of them are coming back. So 9 of the 11 offensive starters are coming back this year. So that really does help. So I think that Isaiah Likely was considered. He might be a good guy. He did return, but he was thinking about going into the draft. But he's coming back, which is always nice to hear. So I think that you did lose C.J. Marable, who was their one of the star running backs, who ran for a good bit of yards last year, over 1,000. So, but you also have guys like Reese White, Shermani Jones, who are coming back, who ran for almost 900 yards, combined themselves, got around 10 touchdowns. So there, you have a good mix of guys who you're going to just be able to go in there and just more of a plug-and-play type of offense. So that's really going to help out. The O-line, that's tremendous, man. They got a lot of guys coming back on that O-line, which is key. You got Trey Carter, who's a first-team All-Sun Belt selection, who started in 48 consecutive games, so that's always great to hear. And they have a really good O-line. So with pretty much the offense coming back intact, you have good receivers, who a few of them are gone, but you have the most of the core coming back. You have your start running back who left, but you have 2 guys who proved last year that they can do some good work, who are going to be able to fill in. And like I said, you have a great head coach. This offense is looking pretty good. Now let's go back on over to the defense side of the ball, because you can't just have one side of the coin. You got to have the other. So their defense, man, they're bringing a lot of them back too. 10 of the 11 from last year are coming back. Like I said, Taron Jackson, who I mentioned earlier, who was their defensive end, he is gone. He was the Sun Belt Defensive Player of the Year. So that is going to hurt them a little bit in terms of production. But I think that while he did get drafted, he went to the Buffalo Bills, I believe. He is going to have hopefully a good career there. But you are going to have a lot of good guys coming back, too. You got C.J. Brewer at the D-line. You got Jeffrey Gunter, who's a great O-linebacker. And then you got the Jordan Strong, who is a cornerback, who is going to be hopefully, making that good step. And he did get all Sun Belt honors. So that is a good building block to get off of, like I said, for first team especially. So I think that those guys who have a good bit of tackles, they got a lot of quarterback hurries as well, having the QB pressure and getting the ball out of his hands quickly. I mean, for a defense that had a lot of tackles for losses last year, they had 77. And for a team that had 34 sacks as well, with 16 interceptions, this defense, who's coming back with pretty much a full force, is looking to build up on that. And I mean, they have a good schedule, man. They're solid all around. I could go on and on about how good this team is expected to be and how much they have a good impact, man. They have guys who were transferred over from bigger schools, more well-known schools. You have just a few I can think of. You have Emmanuel Johnson coming over from Georgia Tech. You have defensive back Trey Douglas, who's coming over from Vanderbilt. So those 2, ACC, SEC schools, they figured, hey, I'm not getting enough playing time over there. Let me go over to the Sun Belt, and let's see how I can produce over here looking good in the teal. So I think overall, like it said, for a team that finished 11-1 with a heartbreaking loss in their bowl game, I think that overall this is going to be a great year. And I mean, last year was really a Cinderella story because I mean they haven't recorded a winning season at the FBS level until the other year. So this is a team who they really kind of shocked the world last year. I believe they got up to around, I like to say they got close to the top 10, maybe inside of it. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was just wild seeing them, man, in that top 15 range. And it was just a blur that all this was even happening. It felt like a fever dream. But for a team who is, like I said, I'm looking at their schedule, and they're facing, a few of their regular teams. I see the Citadel, who's all, one of their big rivals. I see Kansas in there. I see Arkansas State, Troy, Georgia Southern, Georgia State. So this is a very good team who's got a pretty good schedule to play with. I think all in all, I expect them to be going for that Sun Belt Championship at the end of the day in December. And I think that this team, it would not surprise me one bit, Jeremiah, if they maintain inside the top 25 once again in 2021. I would love for them to stay in the top 15, but I just think that a lot of the other teams are coming with a little bit more firepower, and especially with all the COVID stuff, with some of the teams who didn't get to play all their games last year too, that might bump them down a little bit. But I expect this team to maintain that top 25 status, keep on shocking the world, and just go Teal. Go Teal.
Okay, go Teal. Man, Coastal Carolina. Yeah, so this is one of those teams, and I'm so glad that we're covering this team, that it was kind of a sleeper to the mainstream, maybe people that that watch or whatever, but football. But I think when they started to really get their momentum in there and to get these wins under their belt, especially with those upsets, I think people are like, oh, maybe I need to be taking a little more note of Coastal Carolina. And so I think coming into this season, you've got a team that will come in ranked, a team that will come in with, like you said, a great team with a great coach, just a great looking team. A great visually looking team. I love their logo, love their society over there. They're by the beach. They've been working hard this whole year, and they are ready to prove themselves. Mr. Logan Landers, what are your final words on Coastal Carolina?
Hopefully the Cinderella story can continue, man. I think that this team has a lot of momentum building off of a great 2020 season. Like you mentioned, they have a great head coach. They have, their quarterback who got the honors last year, being an all Sun Belt player of the year. So they have a lot of guys coming back. The majority of their starters, like I said, they lost a few guys, but that's always going to happen in college. But like I said, the majority, I'd say 90, 95% of the team's coming back. So you have a lot of guys who are going to run it back, who are going to hopefully get their championship under their belt. And we'll see how far they can take them this year, man. But I'm looking forward to seeing them play. Hopefully they can get a few more games on national television. It's always hard to see some of the Sun Belt games because that's not a well-known conference. Like the Pac-12, SEC, and all that. But for a team who does have a teal field, mind you, who has a just bright field with bright jerseys, I'd love to see that more on TV, man. That makes some good television for me. So hopefully this team goes good, man, because I'll be keeping another close eye on them and seeing how far they can go this year.
Yeah, and that's the final word I would say, too, is I am loving their colors and their logos. I might just have to grab some Coastal Carolina gear just so I can rock with the coast. I love anything beach-related anyway. And so this would give me a good team that I don't know a whole lot about that I'm just now getting a passion for. I can start my fandom early on with them, and I can learn about them and talk to you about them, talk about Mr. Vincent Turner. I'm sure he knows a great deal about their past and some of their great historic players. And, it can give me a chance as a fan of college football, but not one that knows a lot of the extended teams, gives me a good opportunity to explore those teams and find out more and just enjoy along with the fan base. So for everybody watching, thank you so much, and continue. And if you are not super into Coastal Carolina, then do like me, start your journey now, and we can follow Coastal Carolina through this entire season. And for all the great Coastal Carolina fans out there, thank you so much for welcoming us. We're going to cover, I'll personally find out what they're doing throughout the season. Mr. Landers has a slight personal connection that gives him a reason to keep checking them out. And we'll keep on looking at Coastal Carolina. And if you're watching us right now, thank you so much on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And if you're listening to us on our podcast, thank you so much. And if you haven't jumped over there yet, please listen to our podcast, 100 Yards of Football. We bring you new episodes every single day. We cover all of the great teams. We have interviews with historic players, with legendary people from all over the industry, including players, coaches, and people that are other sportscasters. And each week we come to you live, and we put up our podcast on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, Google Podcast, or anywhere else that you listen to podcasts. So for the entire team here at 100 Yards of Football, thank you so much for watching our preview of the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers with my dude, Logan Landers, who might have been an alum over there if things had been just slightly different. I guess we'll never know, because thankfully we've got Logan Landers here with us, and we're covering Coastal Carolina today. So for our entire team here, thank you so much for watching, and we'll be back with another